Jennifer, I'm not sure if Michael Bitzer had copied you on the emails, but he is not planning to be here today. I don't know if we want to go ahead and get started or what.
Oh, I'm glad I'm able to be here then to answer questions from the steering committee perspective. Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and get started. I have not read the notes from last time since this is not one of my committees, but I'm here to talk about July 15th. And anyway.
Okay, Jennifer, this is Anna Mills Wagner again.
Yep.
Since I'm allegedly one of these co-chairs. Did everybody read the draft report that Michael sent out?
I did, yes.
Yeah. Well,
I have not had a chance to yet.
Okay. It's long, but I don't think there's anything earth-shattering in it. I would just from what he and I discussed and based on the report, is his opinion and probably mine too, that what we need to consider today about before we draft the final response would be, number one, the issue of ranked choice voting, and number two, the role of unaffiliated voters and or the general public in the counting process. And I think those are the two things he thought we should talk about if we wanted to today, and then decide how we wanted to recommend a report for the commission for the July 15th meeting. So, anybody want to jump in?
I think his conclusion on ranked choice voting is the right statement. I think if you want to go beyond that, you'll end up with multiple opinions. I would be one for sure and have expressed that, and you would force me into a position of writing a minority report if we said much different than what he stated. I thought his statement was, we talked about it. It technically is not a specific counting vote procedure, and I think we just should leave it to another day.
Okay, I think, Julie, are you on the other committee that might have looked at ranked choice voting? This is Anna Mills again. And maybe you're not.
She might be getting out of her car and getting into her house. I believe she is, and let me jump in real quick from the steering committee perspective on ranked choice voting. And I remember getting Michael's really long thing. I haven't read it either, but
can you hear me, Jennifer?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I couldn't get it off my mute. So we did look at it in the other committee, and we all had little papers that we wrote on it, on our topics, and mine was thresholds and ranked choice voting. So we decided that if there's a recommendation, it would be more around thresholds, because the threshold in North Carolina is so low, and especially for special elections, it's very expensive to run, and we don't, the turnout is so low. So one of the recommendations, basically not anything on ranked choice voting, especially since it's not technically legal. We'd have to have a bill passed to be able to do it, but the recommendation would be that somebody should be looking at voting thresholds for North Carolina, and if it still makes sense to either have as thresholds or special elections.
Stephen, you want to say anything about that? Because I know you have strong thoughts about the ranked voting.
Well, I've given it a lot of thought. I've done reading about it. There was even an article that went out about it in North Carolina. My general feeling is if one of the parties or any party was to choose to utilize this system within their primary, that'd be akin to Republicans allow unaffiliates to vote in a Republican primary, but if they vote in the Republican primary, they can't vote in a runoff. I think that there may be some reason to leave it to those, but whatever your thresholds are, and I'd be interested in reading that summary report or draft report just to see what the thoughts are. you would ultimately be allowing an election, especially if it's close, to be determined by the candidates, voters who got the least support first. Then it would move up and move up. Well, there may be a reason that they are the least vote getter. It could be because of nobody knew them, but it could also be because they were radical or beyond the party's threshold of belief and doctrine. And now you're going to force those at the top to potentially be cutting deals with the lower tier for the purposes of gaining their second choice vote. And now you're opening yourself up to what could potentially be suggested are the least supported candidates' views. I just, and if you look at primaries, it's not as impactful, but if you got into a general election, you could have a lot of alliances created between parties and other groups for the purposes of gaining their second vote, which in the long run, I think they would have to appeal to those at the bottom of the ticket, which would be once again, the most radical.
Tracy Watts.
Okay, Rachel, can you forward the paper that I wrote for the other committee?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do that real quick.
Okay, because the threshold conversation is separate from ranked choice voting conversation. This is just, we just looked at, my topic that was assigned to me was looking at thresholds and ranked choice voting. So just thresholds under the normal, plurality form of voting is still something that we probably need to look at in this state. And I gave an example in that paper, I won't go through it all again, but when you have a primary that is in a district which is so heavily skewed to one party or another, and it's sort of a predestined outcome as to which party's going to win, and then you have a low turnout, it just, it's really disenfranchising voters when you have a 30% threshold. And I gave an example, of that in, I think, District 12 for a congressional race, when essentially 6.6% of the eligible voters, selected their congressional candidate. So, but that's a separate issue than ranked choice voting.
Okay, well, let me just, for those of y'all, this is Anna Mills again. So if we're just looking at the ranked choice voting for this committee, not the threshold, Michael and I sort of come up with some language that would basically say, and I think Steve would be in agreement with it too. The committee had significant differences among the committee members as to what should be done, and we should mention it, but perhaps with no recommendation advanced right now without more study. That's sort of what Michael and I thought might work, at least for ranked choice voting. Thoughts?
I think that's perfectly reasonable. Your committee thought about it, discussed it. Yeah, the committee on primary discussed it as well. And you didn't come to a conclusion. There are pluses and minuses. And, focus on other things that are more doable and maybe have more consensus. And,
Yep.
The other thing I want to mention real quick, because the steering committee talked about, how this is going to play on July 15th in terms of media there. And also because every committee talked about civic education and public awareness of
Yep.
how our system works. We do want folks to really focus on what they discovered about how things work now. The good things, if there are challenges, like there was, one committee talked about disability, folks with disability having access and, polling and also mail in, whatever, those kind of things are not going to confuse voters or the media if we talk about, needs there. talking about ranked choice voting might confuse people
Yep.
because we don't have it.
Yep.
And the sense is that for this point, because November's coming, we want people to trust the system as it is now. The recommendations are not going to be put in place before then anyway. And so we're going to really focus on the public education part of it. So saying that you discussed something and there were different views, et cetera, is perfect.
Okay, I think we'll just leave it at that then. I do know, just for the heck of it, and we did do ranked choice voting one time. Maybe it was just judicial elections because I had to participate in it. It was a nightmare as a candidate. But I don't know if that was a pilot program or what. Does anybody else know?
Yeah, there were two races. One was Wake County, and I can't remember what the other one was. That tried-
Hendersonville
Yeah.
and and Cary.
Yeah, Julie, you did. You can give her the update.
Yeah, it was a pilot program that two jurisdictions chose to move forward with. And there was no money put towards it by the General Assembly in terms of voter education, software that was needed, like nothing. It was just sort of, you're on your own if you want to try this. And that definitely had its problems that, they weren't able to really get messages out, help educate people, that kind of thing. The end of, by and large, it's support the system difficult. They preferred it. The majority of voters try. You've got to put behind it. Now today, 8 of the choice voting tabulation. Back then they could that. It's
Julie, you're really hard to hear. I don't know if you're in
Yeah.
a dead zone or a tunnel or something, but we're getting like every other word.
really
Yeah,
Yeah.
breaking
Okay.
up.
well. All right, I'm going to try to switch over to my iPad now that I'm here. And again, I apologize. The traffic was just dead stop for about 25 minutes. So I'll join you back in a second.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, so is it okay, Jennifer, or everybody in this committee agrees? We'll just leave the ranked choice voting as Michael sort of suggested and move on to other things that aren't quite as confusing.
Sounds good.
Okay. Now, the second thing, and I'm not quite sure what to do with this, we thought about for this committee, is the role of unaffiliated voters and or the general public in the counting process. And I think by that, we mean the opportunity for the public to either be there in person to watch votes being counted or have a Zoom capability so that the public could watch it on Zoom. But that might be a problem because some tiny counties might not have that capacity to be able to do Zoom. What do y'all think about that thing? You don't hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, people had commented that it would be nice to be able to observe votes being counted because there's so many misconceptions about what happens. I know some counties, I know Brunswick County, people can come in and watch votes being counted. But do we want to raise anything like that or not mention it?
So-
What? Yeah.
So I joined pretty late in the process, and I've only been part of one meeting prior to this. And when you say counting votes, I'm assuming that means the absentee meetings that start 5 weeks before each election. Am I correct in that?
No, I think it's more the night of after the poll. I'm sorry, after the polls have closed. That's what I think we're talking about.
Okay. So, and the public is able to go to any precinct once the polls close to view the process of the actual closing of the machines, and that's when that tape prints.
Okay,
So yeah, I was just trying to make sure I was on
sure.
the same page about what does counting of votes mean.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think, and you know who the elections director is, Brunswick. She
mhm.
said people come in, I think, to the Board of Elections and watch whatever they do there. And it's not I mean, it's after the polls are closed.
Rachel,
Right.
don't you work closely with Sarah?
I'm sorry.
Rachel, don't you work closely with Sarah?
Yeah, I work relatively closely.
So I'm sure that you can kind of weigh in on this as well.
Okay, yeah, and I think public coming into Board of Elections offices is just so dependent on how the office is set up and where the
Yep.
computer system is that we are uploading our results to. And I just think that that's so county specific. I know in Orange County, my election computer is in a small room. And so that would be unnerving and difficult to have the public kind of just watch me upload results. So yeah, I'm not sure what the best answer is for that. But I do think it is really important that for our absentee meetings where the board is, considering absentee ballots and those ballots are being ran through a machine, that is an opportunity to allow, those meetings are open to the public in Orange County. We also stream those meetings so that anyone is able to watch. And I feel like that is something that, other counties could consider is streaming those meetings live.
Yeah, and the state board does that as well. I know because I watched it in 2020. It was like watching paint dry, but
Mhm.
because you can't, you've got a camera in the corner of the room, you can't really see, a whole lot of detail.
Yeah.
But you're right. There are also, if it's a close race,
Yep.
they go through provisional ballots and they go through absentee, and those are done kind of one by hand.
Yep.
And Mecklenburg County does let you watch. I had to do that one of my county commission races. They were going through provisional ballots and they had to like put a line on the floor so you can't step past this line, but we were able to
Yeah.
watch and
Okay.
listen to the board members talk through each ballot.
Sort of like the hanging chads that we watched on TV forever. Okay. So how would you all like to phrase what we might want to have in our draft report concerning I tell you what, how about this? I'm going to talk to Michael tomorrow, and maybe he and I can come out with some language and send it back out to y'all. Would that work?
That sounds good.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that'd be good. Maybe summarize all such recommendations.
Okay.
Now, there are restrictions on unaffiliated voters being able to observe. I don't know if you all talked about that at all, because that's not the counting of votes, that's the actual voting.
No, and I think we probably got some words transposed here. It really basically was the ability of the general public to be able to observe portions or all of the vote counting process. But again, that's county specific. I mean, do you know would all county boards have the ability to live stream the process?
So they should. I mean, it's an internet connection and really a Zoom or a Teams or whatever platform they want to use. But I feel like
Okay.
live streaming is a relatively inexpensive way to go about opening up meetings to the public. You know, we've live streamed our meetings since 2020 and we got it in practice, and we never stopped because we did appreciate the ability for more people to join our meetings. And also we have a pretty small office, just physically
Yeah.
small office. So it was nice just to kind of reduce capacity here. So again, I think all counties have the ability to do so. And I do feel like it's a relatively inexpensive option to do so.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and we
Okay.
can, before you finalize it, we can certainly check with the board, you know, state board, and find out if, you know, if there are counties that are very, very challenged in doing that. But I would say, yes, transparency is always good.
Yes. Okay. We'll come up with something and get it back to y'all. Jennifer, that's all I have to say. You're welcome to take it away if you want to.
Well, I think I said the main thing, in terms of, you know, focusing on what's good about it now. That I'll find out if every county allows observing of, you know, provisional ballots and that kind of thing. Focusing on how it's done now, and mentioned other topics that came up, and just say there wasn't, you know, consensus on it. Might be discussed in the future. If
Yep.
you want the pluses and minuses, that's fine. But yeah, you can talk to Michael about the actual wording. We're also gonna send you a template for a PowerPoint.
Okay.
Because when you present on July 15th, you might want to, it just helps you organize your thoughts. You don't have to use it, but a lot of people wanted one just to, like, some people want to throw up a graph to show, you know, who uses which kind of voting, that kind of thing.
I think I have that. I think I've got.
Oh, good.
I think Michael sent it to me already. Yep.
Yeah, I sent the template around to the entire commission, like the entire
you.
committee as well.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Super, super. So yeah, so that's just to help you organize, you know, who was on the committee, how many times you met, what were the main topics you discussed.
Gotcha.
And that's pretty much it. Everybody needs to just confirm if they can be there July 15th. We are gonna, you know, there will be media there. We want to have it help with public awareness and education on the fact that, you know, our system is pretty good. There's some, you know, if you want to think about good things you discovered when you were doing your research, whatever, that's always good to emphasize too.
Okay.
But I don't think I have anything else in terms of how we're trying to wrap up to get that draft done by July 15th. And also to know that we're going to have 26 town halls between now and early voting in October. We're going to collect public input from those as well, kind of what the public's concerned about, et cetera. And so that will be added to reports as well. That's why these are still draft, because we're still more information to be added to them.
That's great. Thank you. Is anybody else on this counting votes committee would like to say anything?
Yes, I want to ask Jennifer a question. I've raised my hand and then lowered it, raised it and lowered it, because I kept thinking Jennifer was stopping. Sorry, Jennifer. You said something earlier, and I just want to clarify. This is Caroline.
Yeah.
You said you think that we should, that our report should be about things that are being done now, right, in the process. Is that right?
Well, also, I mean, we're looking at, you know, draft findings. And so part of the findings, every committee said we need better public, you know, education, information on how things actually work. And so part of it is here's what we discovered that, you know, what
Yes.
works in counting votes. And then the second part of that will be, are there any areas that deserve looking at for a possible improvement? Because things can always get better. But we
Sure.
don't want to go into deep detail on those parts, because we want the public not to be we don't want the media to be confused either, because
Yep.
the media is going to get to the public. So it's great that you're kind of tabling the ranked choice voting conversation. You can clearly say that it's come up and that a lot
Yep.
of people like it and it's got some pluses, but you know, you didn't come to any conclusions there. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I think that's what so So, yeah, I just think it's very important for us to include that first part too. The things that we have found about how it's actually done here.
Yep.
How the process takes place and the good things in it, but the things that we have found that are good and positive and are secure. And then yes, go into and these are things that we recommend that we look into, but I do think it's really important. I mean, I just think people are confused
Yep.
as we
Absolutely.
found about actually how does it happen? What does happen?
Right.
And so I just think it's very important that we highlight
Yep.
the things that are very clear in the way it's being done now before we say, and these are things that we think should be looked into should be looked into to make it better.
Absolutely. You've got it. You hit the
Okay.
nail on the
Yep.
head.
Okay.
And things like people, chain of custody, transparency, all those, those kind of things are important to highlight. The security of those.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Rachel, I just want you to know, I really appreciate some of the things you said because I do think so many things here are done county to county. And so it's good to hear I appreciated hearing some of those things you said. So thank you.
Yeah, we discovered that in the early voting committee, that some counties only have one early voting site because they just don't have that many people.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So
no,
thank
it's
you for that
good.
clarification, Jennifer. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, no, you guys are spot on. Sounds great. Thanks for all the time, and you're right, Michael's draft was lengthy. I look forward to reading it.
I look forward to reading it too. I'm this weekend. I didn't have time in 24 hours to read it. Yeah.
I've been teasing him lately. I've been calling him Data, like the guy
Yeah.
in Star Trek.
He loves it. And if anybody has any suggestions after you've had a chance to look at this deeper, please let him know. I think he'll be back around, I think, tomorrow. So,
Yep.
and I'll get something else out to y'all about the rank voting situation. All right. Is this it, we think?
I think it's a wrap.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Enjoy the pretty weather. And
Thank
we
you for
will-
your patience and listening to my monologue. I
No,
appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you talking. Anybody that's talks and speaking. All right, thank y'all so much. And
Thanks,
we'll see
everybody.
you. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good
Thanks.
one.
Thanks.
Bye.